When we Draenei first arrived on this world, Naru accompanied us. But they could not stop our vessel from crashing. The dark star that appeared in the skies above Drano that terrible night was no celestial body. It was a fallen Naru, ejected from our vessel in moments of panic and terror. Its name was Kara.
Hello guys, this is Donald's Movies, and today I got another World of Warcraft RP guide. So in this video, I will be guiding you on how to roleplay as a Draenei in the game. So first of all, we'll cover the lore you need for your backstory, and I will just give you a general understanding of the history. I won't go too much into detail. Then I will give you a quick insight into their culture, traditions, and also help you name your characters. Then finally, I will also give you some guideline personalities you can choose, and also give you some details on the classes you can choose as a Draenei, and pretty much how you can pull it off. So without further ado, let's just get a quick look into the Draenei history and their lore. So the Draenei history goes all the way back, more than 20,000 years ago, probably even 30,000 years ago. No one really knows. I don't think there are any official numbers. And they started on the world of Argus, which today is really unknown what happened to it. Now in that world lived a really intelligent race called the Eredar, and on the top of the society were the three most prominent members. So you had Archimonde, Kil'Jaeden, and Velen. And they were almost something like brothers, they were very close. And then one day the corrupted titan Sargeras came down and offered the three of them immense power if they serve him in return. So Archimonde and Kil'Jaeden of course accepted it almost immediately, while Velen saw through it and saw like what would happen to his race, and realized it isn't going to do anything good for the Eredar and the world, so he decided to decline. Soon enough, his brothers saw him as a traitor and made it their main goal to destroy him and his followers. So he took his followers and named themselves Draenei, meaning the exiled ones. Now before, all of them were called the Eredar, however they are now split, and the evil Eredar are called the Man'ari, while the refugees that went with Velen are called the Draenei. Now they landed on many worlds, but every time Kil'Jaeden found them and attacked them, so they fled every time, until they managed to find the world of Draenor, where they pretty much settled in. It's really debatable whether it's a few hundred years or a few thousand years, but I'm guessing by the official lore it should be a few thousand years. And they formed an entire civilization there and lived quite peacefully together with the orcs, only making a few silent trades, but generally not having much of a connection. And then Kil'Jaeden found them. Now this time, he knew if he attacked them directly that they would just flee like they have done in the past. So he decided to get tactical about it and use the orcs as a tool. The orcs were pretty much just a race that was living together with the Draenei. Now, Kil'Jaeden pretended to be one of the ancient orcish ancestors and said really bad things about the Draenei, how they were evil, how they were plotting against them and all of that, which led to the orc clans uniting and forming the first horde. And this is the first time the orcs actually had any confrontations with the Draenei, and soon enough, Ner'zhul from the Shadowmoon clan that started pretty much the entire thing and got the first vision, he realized that he was being manipulated by Kil'Jaeden, but that didn't really matter all that much, because once he decided to not do it, Gul'dan, his apprentice, took over the horde and pretty much led it further down the corrupted path. Now the orcs are said to have killed over 80% of their entire population, so that's approximately 8 out of 10 Draenei were killed, and the rest that survived turned into lesser forms or just evolved, so they turned into the Broken. However, only a handful of the Draenei led by Velen actually survived, just as the Draenei as they were before, and they were hiding in Zangarmarsh for a very long time. And that happened all the way until the Blood Elves came to Outland together with Illidan, so that's pretty much the events of Warcraft 3, so you could say they've been hiding since around a bit before the first war until the third war, pretty much until the end of the third war. Now then they managed to wrestle control of a part of the Tempest Keep called Exodar in order to actually escape from this world. However, before they actually managed to do that, the Blood Elves sabotaged the ship and then crashed to Azeroth on an island west of Kalimdor. So you have the Blood Mistiles and the Azer Mistiles, which pretty much belong to the Night Elves, and they don't really have any history with the Draenei. They pretty much just crashed there, so you could say that before that there were Furbolgs and the Night Elves and all of that. Now soon enough they picked up what was left of the survivors and they started exploring what was around there. Now their first contact was with the Night Elves because they're very close to them geographically, and from what they heard about the Alliance they actually decided to join it. And of course, the Alliance was also fighting the Orcs, which were their main enemies, and the ones pretty much that are responsible for the entire destruction of their almost entire population. Now, in the Burning Crusade, they ventured into Outland together with the Alliance and fought a Legion problem and tried to solve it once and for all, and they kinda did to some extent, but the Burning Legion is still a major threat in the lore, so there's still gonna be a major fight in the future. Now in Cataclysm, they also made a huge breakthrough and they found a possible cure for the broken Draenei survivors, especially the ones in the Swamp of Sorrows, who before that escaped through the Dark Portal alone and kinda settled in the Swamp of Sorrows. Now in Worlds of Draenor, we're actually going back in time, and the Draenei are going to have a major role in this expansion, unlike the previous few expansions, as we will be battling alongside them, of course if you're Alliance, but still the main threat is going to be the Iron Horde, so the Draenei are going to be the good guys here, as they were in the actual lore. Alright, that is all there is for the lore. Of course there is a lot more, and this is kinda just a quick overview, just to get you up to the speed for a Draenei. Of course, if you'd like to see a more detailed guide on the lore, you can check out my Draenei lore lesson. Also, if you want an even more detailed guide, you can check out my book guides on my channel as well. And pretty much, I described all of the books that are currently made for Warcraft, with a kind of a brief description of what happens, and a few books mention the Draenei, so if you want to pick those books up to learn more about in detail, you can check that out. Alright, now let's get a quick insight into their life, culture and tradition. Now the entire Draenei culture is pretty much based around the light, and out of all the races that actually worship the light and use it, the Draenei are pretty much at the top. Now as Eredar, who were once known for their intelligence, magic was also always a part of their life, and they were pretty much respected as very high intelligent creatures, and they were very prominent in magic. However, later on, once they made connection with Naru, they started worshipping the light, so generally they have a very religious life, although they still use magic and all that stuff. Now when it comes to their age, it isn't fully known, but they are considered almost immortal to some extent. There are some Eredar like Velen who are over 25,000 years old, and that is even older than Malfurion, for example, who is only like 10-15,000 years old. And even Duratan said when he first visited the Draenei that there was like a child that was a few hundred years old, and that is a bit weird like compared to the humans. So even though they might not be considered immortal, they are an extremely long-lived race, and for them dying of old age isn't really a problem. Now the Draenei are mostly peaceful people, and they don't really have any sort of like racist attitudes or are like sexist, so a good dose of equality between males and females exists, although there might be some roles that the males have to take, because judging by their like structure, males are usually a lot stronger than the females, but that kinda depends on the roles and all of that. However, a lot of them do hold personal grudges against the Orcs mostly, because what they did is destroy their entire population after all, and pretty much led them from like this prosperous society to only like a handful of survivors and all of that. Although Troll and Velen have tried to make some peace and have even succeeded in some ways, but still a lot of the Draenei hold personal grudges and the scars are just too deep to be forgiven that easily. Now, their opinions on other races are quite diverse, but in the core, as I said, they're very peaceful people and also wise, mostly due to their age, but generally as a race they're pretty wise, so they don't really like to hold really long grudges. And that is also a bit of a reason why they don't like the humans to like a great extent, even though they're their allies, and that is mostly because the humans are known to be reckless and sometimes even openly racist, and they can even perceive the Draenei as the evil Manari fallen brethren, so they might not like the humans to some of the extent. They also have some different like opinions on other races, but generally it's mostly positive, even to their enemies, although all of the allies of the Horde are considered as enemies, so they don't really have a high opinion on them. Now the Draenei have a very unique architecture, if you could tell, and it is said to be a reference to the Protoss from StarCraft, which is kinda obvious. And a lot of their buildings are quite related to crystals, all sorts of gems and all that. And now a lot of people might think that they're like highly technology advanced race because they have all these ships that can fly through the universe, different planets and all of that. But actually they aren't that amazing and are mostly kinda using the Naru technology. So even their own technicians only managed to do limited repairs on Exodar, so technology wise they aren't the most advanced race, although they're pretty advanced to some extent. Alright, now appearance wise, the Draenei are one of the tallest races there are, and they're quite different from all of the other races. They have these tentacles, and also average around 6 to 8 feet tall, although they are even taller than Draenei, which is a bit taller than the orcs, but a bit shorter than the Tauren as well, so they can be considered the third tallest race, maybe just a bit below the trolls once they like spring up. Now when it comes to naming your character, it is a bit different from other races. They don't really have these surnames, or very rarely, and in most cases some NPCs have surnames, but that is mostly an Easter egg in a game and is a reference to something else. But looking at it lore-wise, the Draenei usually just stick to one name, so do keep that in mind when choosing your full name. So I would suggest using an online generator to find the name you would like, but mostly names that contain repeating letters or are kinda different to human names, so kinda be careful when picking your names. Examples would be like Marad, Velen, Vulen, Divin, and all sorts of these names that you can find through the online name generators. Alright, now let's go over a few guideline personalities that you can pick as a Draenei. However, these are, as I said, kind of just cookie cutter personalities and not something you should copy completely. So what I mean is, you should mostly build from these basic examples and sort of use it like a starting point. So if you're looking to roleplay seriously, I would advise that you spend some time figuring out the personality you want your character to have, and also figuring out the backstory, as that is kinda very related to the personality. Now the first personality type would be the peaceful Draenei. Now this would be kinda the Velen type and probably the most common and stereotypical Draenei. Now they're very peaceful and wise people, and they're much like the Night Elves, and it mostly comes with the old age, since a 300-year-old Draenei would be the same as like a 20-year-old human. So if you pick this one, I would suggest getting the differences aside and like forgiving the orcs and seeing the things from their point of view, like they were manipulated and all of that. And also generally having like a peaceful attitude and an outlook towards the world, mostly like a pacifist. But yet, I mean, if there is a threat, you have to be like willing to protect yourself and your loved ones. Alright, the second personality type would be the neutral type. Now, this one is kind of in between the next one I'm going to cover and the previous one, although it's mostly related to the first one. So generally this Draenei, as I said, is quite similar to the peaceful type. The only difference is that he might still kinda hold a grudge against the orcs and can't really forgive them for what they've done, which is fine I guess, because they did really do a lot of damage and all sorts of evil towards the race. Even though they were once really noble and their heart was in the right place, the Skaras might have changed their outlook a bit and they might not be the typical Draenei, but are mostly just neutral when it comes to all sorts of subjects, so they neither like hate their enemies, but can't really fully forgive them. Alright, and the third and the last one would be the aggressive type. Now with this one, you can go about it in many ways. First way you can go is you can be just a regular Draenei with a bigger resentment against the orcs and like killing them on every turn, kinda despising them. You can even say that the Skaras in the past have messed you up and you just can't get back to your old peaceful self. Now another way to go about it is sort of a different RP style, but if you want you can roleplay like an evil Draenei, although that's a bit different. I mean, it's not just a typical Draenei RP style, but it could be quite interesting if you want to try something new. Although I'm guessing you won't be able to like find an evil guild, although everything is possible. If you want, you can even form that. So you can have like an evil Burning Legion guild and you can like battle against positive guilds and all of that. Alright, that is all I have for the personalities. As I said, these are kind of just drastic examples, and if you want to build your characters, you should just use this as a starting point instead of like copying it directly if you want more of like a detailed character. Alright, and lastly, before I end this guide, let's go over the classes that you can play as a Draenei. So, I will only cover a few. I won't go into like crazy detail on it, as it would make the video really long, and I try to keep these videos around 15-20 minutes long, hopefully. So I won't cover everything in detail, just kinda give you a quick description. So, as always, let's start out with the warrior. Now, even though it's the first one, it's not really the most common like with other races, and the warriors generally aren't anything like crazy lore-wise or whatever it is, and pretty much, if you can tell, they prefer physical powers over magic, and they're mostly soldiers that fight on the front lines, mostly carrying shields and protecting the other spellcasters behind them. Now, this can be an interesting class to play, even though it's not really related to the most important part of the Draenei society, and that is the light. Alright, the next one would be the paladin. Now, this is pretty much the signature race for the Draenei, and probably the most common and interesting race to play with as a Draenei. You can roleplay them as sort of like a vengeful thing in a way, although it might be just best to leave that to the warriors, as paladins are mostly known as calm and righteous protectors. So they use the light, which is an integral part of all the Draenei, and they also fight for their own race and their cause. So if you feel like playing almost like a Superman or like a warrior of the light or like a righteous protector, this might be the best class for you. Alright, the next one would be the priest. Now this one is quite interesting and is kind of the main signature race of the Draenei together with the paladins, and they are pretty much the main connection between the Naaru and the Draenei, and are pretty much what connect them to the light. Now Holy is the best spec you can pick for this, as Shadow is almost never seen between the Draenei, as they honestly like to stay away from anything that is dark and can lead them to any sort of corruption, and that is pretty much why you can't really see like Draenei warlocks and all of that. Now you can go about this class in a few ways, but the best one is to just be a healer, but if you want you can also be like a prophet or like a visor, just individual, but it's not an ideal class if you want to be the one that is leading the fight. Alright, and the last one I'm going to cover is the mage. Now this one may not be the main one, but is sort of one of the oldest one when it comes to the Eredar. As I said in the start of the video, they were considered really intelligent and had a lot of knowledge when it comes to magic. Now unlike some races, they don't really distrust mages and all sorts of wizards, and they kinda see them as scholars and very respected individuals, because at one point in their past, they were the ones that mainly wielded such magics and were respected for it. So if you want to go for more of like a traditional type of a Draenei, like an Eredar, that might be the best way to go about it. Now there are also a few others I didn't get the time to cover, but it's pretty much just the shamans that pretty much originate from the story of Nabundo. Also the hunters, who were mostly just gatherers and useful members of the Draenei society, and a lot of other subclasses that you can make up from, the ones you don't have in the game, and of course the Death Knights. And as I said, I will try to cover the Death Knights in like a specific video, so I will go over the Death Knights by class instead of like each race like covering the Death Knights. So that is all I have for this RP guide. Do give me some feedback on what you think, and also some suggestions on what race you would like to see covered next, as I plan on getting these RP guides few times a month, so hopefully it should be finished within a few months, definitely by the end of the year. Now anyways, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, favorite and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel a lot and keeps these videos going. And also check out my Twitch stream, as I stream a few times a week now on there, usually around 7 to 8 PM GMT. That's pretty much the start time, and I stream for like 2 hours or something like that. Also have a few giveaways every few weeks and all that. So if you follow me on there, you will get the notification when I stream, and you can also ask me all sorts of like lore questions, RP questions, etc. Anyways, thanks so much for taking your time to watch this video, and see you next time.